I just have to acknowledge how weird it is to teach the cameras and not people. Luckily, I do have some people in the room that I can talk to. I know I'm talking to all of you who are at home and tuning in. Thank you for joining us. The Friday night group, we've been in a series of talking about the teachings of my book, Heart of the Revolution, the teachings on mercy and forgiveness and loving kindness, compassion, appreciation, the heart practices. And I'm meant to talk about the chapter tonight on love. The chapter that's called Hardcore Love, that's about the difference between personal love and the kind of central human experience of loving each other, and the kind of love that we feel for our friends and our family, and the difference between that and the kind of romantic love that we experience as human beings. And sexuality gets involved, and it becomes romantic and sexual and intimate. And I didn't really want to talk about that. Maybe I'll reflect on it a little bit after I share some reflections. It feels more pertinent and important to talk about what's happening in our culture. And I know people are probably in different places, but being in Los Angeles right now, and this coronavirus, and just what a huge impact in our lives it's having, and the major shift that's just happened in this last week, but especially the last couple days. We made the decision to not have groups at the meditation center. And just about, I think every meditation center every email list I'm on, I got the emails yesterday and today that all the places are closing, recovery meetings are canceling. Certainly, all of the concerts and sports, and just what a huge shift. Travel changes, businesses shutting down, and how most of us are very directly affected. So I want to address that some. I don't know how much I have to say about it, but I'm definitely sitting in it and practicing with it and feeling it as schools are closing. My children will be home and not going to school, and just a big change, big shift. The encouragement to try to help slow down the spread of this virus that will inevitably spread. And right or wrong, I'm convinced that it's the responsible thing to do our part to what's being called flatten the curve of how the virus is spread and how the infections are treated, and not to overwhelm the healthcare system. Anyways, I know a lot of you are well aware of this and probably more on top of it than I am in a lot of ways. A couple of reflections. this practice that we're being encouraged to do and that I'm just sort of settling into doing, trying to, of social distancing. And like many of you, I'm a hugger. I think kind of being involved in recovery for so long, this tendency to greet with a hug, and this encouragement to not do that for now, not have physical contact with each other and, handshakes and hugging. I was with a group today, and this small group of people were doing some training, some of the teachers, and just how different it is to not embrace, and to not shake hands, to not touch each other, and to practice some renunciation. And that's how I want to frame it. Kind of what does the Buddha teach us about renunciation? And the ability to, a lot of what mindfulness teaches us, and about the ability to be at ease as we did this meditation, the last part, may I be at ease in myself just as I am. And I think my biggest, certainly in meditation, we close our eyes and go inward and pay attention to what's happening. And I think that my biggest experience to reflect on is all of the time that I've spent in meditation retreats. Many of you, some of you, have done meditation retreats, and just how foreign that is in the beginning when we go on retreat, we go into noble silence, and we don't look at each other in the eye, we don't touch each other, we don't speak to each other. And this experience on retreat that gets developed of, I'm just here for me. I'm just meditating. I'm not communicating with anybody else. I'm developing wisdom, compassion through my own attention, through my meditation practice. And it felt like that today, and I feel like it's going to be a bit like that for us if we practice this social distancing of saying, oh, well, I'm with other people on retreat. Often you're with a lot of people. There could be anywhere from, a dozen to 100 or more than 100 people on retreat, but where we have no contact, no physical contact with each other. And we spend days together, sometimes weeks, sometimes months together without any contact. And I know for myself how I can sometimes go through different experiences on retreat of feeling ignored or feeling lonely or feeling, desiring contact or communication. And sometimes I feel so relieved to just not have to seek that kind of contact, and just give all of the attention to myself, to ourselves. And that's the whole practice, is so much of what the Buddha teaches us, is how do you be at ease within yourself as you are. And so I want to frame that for myself and encourage everyone who's listening to think of the social distancing rather as this punishment or this terrible thing, but to think of it as a spiritual practice, as a form of renunciation. Which then leads to, I feel like it leads to the necessity of finding other ways to communicate rather than physical touch or affection. To be able to actually just use our words and say, nice to see you. I appreciate you. I'm happy to see you. I would like to hug you, but I'm not going to hug you. I'd like to It's okay to stay 5 feet away or 6 feet away or whatever is being suggested, and to still have an attitude of friendliness and of love and appreciation for each other. My sense is that probably some people are so happy about like social distancing practice. There's, a lot of people who are like, don't touch me. Who are probably really like, this is my dream come true. Nobody's going to touch me for weeks, hopefully. No awkward handshakes or hugs right? Some people are probably really like, whew, all of that social social pressure of like, I'm not a hugger. Don't touch me. And then others, when I fall into the latter camp, are kind of like, I miss it a bit. I like that. And the practice of not always getting what we want and not doing what we want. And really this, if we're going to break the Buddhist path into the necessity of renunciation, of not doing everything that we want and learning to pull back from, especially unhealthy behaviors and something like this, which is not necessarily unhealthy, but that where there's a motivation that comes from compassion that says, I want to do my parts to not be part of a public health problem. So it is coming from a positive place out of compassion. So I hope that it's helpful and that you think about the social distancing as a mindfulness practice and as an opportunity to give ourselves the kind of attention that we're so often seeking outside of ourselves. That's my first reflection. My second one is about the kind of rapid change in plans and expectations that so many of us are going through. Where, and I know it's true for me, and I imagine it's true for a lot of people, where what we thought was like just last week, we had these plans. And just last week, I thought, I'm teaching on Friday night in Silver Lake and in Frogtown, and I'll be there. And then I had some other plans. There's this new Beastie Boys movie I want to see on Saturday, and then Sunday's my friend's birthday, and we were going to maybe go to the desert on Sunday night, and all of these plans that I had last week. And then today, they're all, yesterday and today, they all changed. Events got canceled. Retreats, workshops and retreats that I have planned in the next month or so are getting canceled. And I know that that's true for so many people. Work is getting canceled. Schools are getting canceled. Events are getting canceled. So all of these ideas, these plans, these expectations that we had are changing. And of course, this is so much what the Dharma teaches us. Everything's impermanent. Everything changes. And how do we relate to it? And what's a healthy... I'm always repeating, and I feel like it's this teaching that feels so dear to my heart, which is let go. And from especially the way that Ajahn Chah framed it, of like maybe all of the Dharma is as simple as letting go. Maybe we can, all of the mindfulness that we're doing, the loving kindness, the compassion, the forgiveness, let go of your resentments, let go of clinging to plans, to ideas, to let go. And it's so easy to say, and it's so fucking hard to do. and where he said, if you let go a little bit, you'll have a little bit of happiness. You'll be a little bit at ease. And if you let go a lot, you'll have a lot of happiness and a lot. If you let go absolutely, then you'll know the freedom of the Buddha. And that's what we're all looking for. I want that kind of freedom. And when things change quickly, we had all these plans, these ideas, these expectations, and then they change, they get canceled. All of a sudden, public health crisis interferes with our plans, with our preferences, with our work, with our finances, with all of the ways that we're affected. How do we bring the Dharma, mindfulness, non-attachment, balance with compassion, to it? So that's the question, and that's the dilemma, and that's the practice. And of course, we can just say, let go. That's so much easier said than done. But the more we ground in the present, here, the more we meditate, the more we soften our bellies, as I was encouraging in the meditation tonight, seeing how tight belly is clinging, as fear is resisting, and how soft belly, released jaw, relaxed torso, open heartedness, rather than the tight resistance, just softening and opening. How much more freedom there is in the openness, in the softness, and letting go. I think, of course, we have to make plans, and we expect that our plans are going to happen as we made them. I'm aware, I hope this is okay, but I'm aware, Ward is in the room with me, and his fiancée Grace, and they have a plan to get married next month. And I'm meant to perform their wedding ceremony, and expect that that's going to happen on the date that they planned it. And of course you have to do that. You plan an event and you expect that it's going to happen at least somewhere close to plan. At least, I think we all have some sense that things aren't going to work out exactly the way we think they are, but at least on the date we thought they were going to, right? I know, there's always a curveball at any event, but I at least expect the event to happen. And of course we have to do that. No matter, we can't use mindfulness. We can't get so spiritually flaky that no, man, I'm always in the present. I don't make any plans. It's always now. No, yes, it's now. And I've got a schedule, and I have plans, and I have important dates, and I expect that they're going to happen like that. And what do we do when it changes? If it changes, if a situation is occurring now where, it might not be the best thing. We might have to postpone. We might have to change. We might have to let go of the expectation, of the plan, of the idea. I think sometimes I think of expectations that are somewhat negative, or there's some clinging in expectations. But I was struck recently. I was emailing my teacher Ajahn Chah about his schedule for December, because I plan to see him in December. Most Decembers I go and I see my teacher in Thailand, and so I was inquiring about his schedule, and his response, which I'm sure he's responded like this to me a lot, was, well, I expect to be there these dates, and I expect to have this. And it was a very Buddhist intentional, not I am going to be here on these dates and I will be teaching at this time. But he was doing the Buddhist understanding that this is the plan, but we don't know if it's actually going to happen. I expect that it's going to happen, but the way that I read it anyways was like, I expect that this is, but I'm not going to say for sure. I'm not going to say I am going to be there. I'm going to say I expect to be there. And that there's actually not a real attachment in it, the way I was hearing it anyways, and the way that I'm thinking about these big changes, and the way I'm encouraging you to think about these big changes, and you to think about these big changes. Of course we make a plan, and we expect the plan to go somewhere close to as planned, and then the Dharma teaches us to have the humility to know that things can change and situations can arise that don't allow us to do what we had planned to do. And then there's some level of choice. The question is, how much am I going to suffer about things changing? How much am I going to suffer about not getting to go to my meditation group or to my recovery meeting or to work or to school or to the political event that I had planned or the possibility of having to change my wedding date or to not have everybody present that I wanted to be present? And, it's not like we can just choose. How much am I going to suffer 1 to 10? How much am I going to suffer about this? You're like, I'll choose to only suffer like a 3. A little bit of suffering feels appropriate, but like, I don't want to choose a 10. Like nobody ever chooses a 10 on purpose. Like when we're suffering a lot, it's because we can't help ourselves. We're not intentionally being like, I'm going to really, I'm going to clean the shit out of this. I'm going to hold on and I'm going to suffer. So if you're a Buddhist, if you're a practitioner, I feel like you always have this internal, I should let go. I should let go a little bit. I should meet this with some compassion. Like once the Dharma is in you, once you've learned the Dharma, then you start to give yourself good advice. Whether or not we can actually do it is another question. Soma, would you restart this? Because after an hour it'll shut off. We'll be right back, Instagram. We have to restart. Yeah, end, and then post, and then restart. Yeah, thank you. We're back. What was I talking about? Oh, something about letting go and how much we're going to suffer about things changing. And plans and expectations, of course, we have to make them. And we have to, we want to learn to be flexible. Learn to be less attached, more open to change, more open to the reality that is occurring now rather than how we want it to be, rather than what we thought it was going to be like, what we planned it to be like. And whatever we can do to come back to the present and to let go of what we're clinging to, and what may be creating that extra level of suffering. Of course, ideally, we want to not suffer. I love to say nothing is worth suffering about. Lots of things are really painful. Lots of things are incredibly tragic. And all of the pain and tragedy and difficulty in the world is worthy of compassion, worthy of caring about it, and worthy of meeting with mercy and forgiveness as much as we can. But this tendency that we have to think, consciously or unconsciously, that I should suffer about this. Suffering is the appropriate response. It's just always confusion. I truly believe the Buddha. I really, I love the Dharma, and I really am all in with the idea that it's possible to navigate whatever is happening in our lives without suffering about it. It doesn't mean that we don't have all kinds of difficult emotions arise. It doesn't mean we don't have all kinds of fear and doubt and worry and unpleasant, afflictive emotions seem to be a given as we take incarnation, all of those feelings. But that meditation teaches us, the Dharma teaches us, that we don't even have to suffer about the doubt and the fear and the worry and the anger that arises around whatever's happening. Just let it arise, know it, name it, see it clearly, and remember that it's impermanent, and it's just a thought, it's just a feeling, it's just a experience that we can tend to, we can relate to, instead of relating from it, instead of suffering about it. So I don't know. I mean, what a strange moment we are in. And of course, mindfulness will help. And accepting the way that it is. As Sumedho says, right now it's like this. It wasn't like this yesterday. It'll be different in 2 minutes. It'll be different tomorrow. But right now it's like this. And acceptance isn't complacency. It isn't being a doormat for the world, but it's just a clear-eyed seeing. It's like this. And I always feel like that statement also asks us to say, it's like this, and what's the appropriate response? Not acceptance, and it's like this, and it's asking me to let go. Non-attachment. It's asking me to forgive. It's asking me to have compassion, kindness. There's a response called for. So I think that those are my thoughts. Now, I don't know if I can do this or not, but I'm going to try. Which is, if you're at home watching and you have questions, I don't know. I might be able to. I'm going to try. So if you're on, fucked up the Facebook. If you're on Facebook, try to send in a question, and I'll see if I can see it and answer it. And if you're on Instagram, I might be able to read it. So if you have a question or something that you'd like to discuss, let me know. Yes, Shannon, I'm getting fancy. I'm going to try it, though. I don't think Facebook is going to let me take questions because I can't see your comments here, but Instagram is. Somebody wants to know if Russ has the Rona. So it's going too fast. Could I talk about equanimity and anxiety? Oh God, you're asking too many questions. I can't see them. This was a terrible idea.
How do I handle fear about my kids and others' well-being?
Okay, good. Ward is helping me. I'm going to take this question about how do I handle fear about my kids and others. Is that what I said?
Others' well-being.
Yeah.
My kids
The
and others.
well-being of my kid and the well-being of others.
Yeah. Of course, like as a parent, the attachment, the fear, the desire to protect our children. And I think having some fear about our children's well-being is completely and totally natural all of the time. And then in a situation like this, it's just increased. And so like the question about how do we handle it, first of all, like just coming to accepting, like, of course I'm afraid for my kids. Let go of any judgment about I'm a meditator and I shouldn't be afraid. Let go of that completely. As much as you can. So first the foundation of, it's like this and I'm afraid. For my children, from my children's well-being, other people's well-being. And then, the Buddhist answer, the antidote to that kind of fear is loving kindness. And so bringing your child into, may you be happy, may you be at ease, may you be free from suffering, may you be healthy and, safe and protected. All of those things you can wish. You can train your heart and mind to respond with that to the fear. And it is an antidote to those kinds of fears. And there's some level of fear that I think we just have to accept, especially in a pandemic situation like this. First time in our lifetime that we've experienced this kind of situation. So I think that fear is going to be a given. Of course we're afraid. And what happens in our body when we're afraid? Does your jaw get tight? Does your belly get tight? Can you soften into it? Can you relax into it? Can you meet it with some level of friendliness? Because when we meet fear with hatred, we're just putting levels of suffering on top of it. So my encouragement is to forgive ourselves fear for being afraid, to accept the fear and to try to respond to it with physical acceptance by softening and some loving kindness. You got another one for me?
Sure. Please remind me how equanimity relates to anxiety.
Well, it's kind of the same answer. I'm going to give the same answer over and over time. Equanimity, there's a few different ways that the Buddha talks about equanimity. But one of the ways is almost like loving kindness, where it's this balanced acceptance of whatever's happening, praise or blame, gain or loss, fame or disrepute, pleasure or pain, and the ability to be balanced and at ease and not pushed off balance by what's happening in our lives or in the world. And there's an equanimous and accepting a balanced relationship. And so that means whether we're anxious, just anxiety feels like this. My palms are hot and my jaw is tight and my breathing is shallow and I'm anxious. And there's a mindfulness, there's an acceptance, there's a that can be at ease even in the midst of some anxiousness. Oh yeah, anxiousness feels like this, and I'm relating to it, and I'm at ease with it. And then that's when we can have some equanimity around that which we're anxious about. I think that's the way I feel like in that context it's connected.
Is meeting this pandemic with humor okay?
It was, since you're asking me, I think not only is it okay, but my own feeling is that keeping a lightness and some level of humor is important in our lives in every situation, whether it's a tragedy and a pandemic and that keeping a lightness for me is always key. And being able to say, right now it's important to take something very seriously, take our spiritual practice, our commitments to the social distancing and all of that stuff, like it's serious, and let's have a sense of humor about it. I pretty much always feel like a sense of humor is appropriate, so you're in trouble when you lose your sense of humor, I think. So I'm a fan of it. That's it. I'll end with a short reflection on what I was supposed to talk about tonight, which was love. And how natural and central to our human experience love is. And that, of course, we love our friends and our family and the people, it's easy to love the people that you love. And it's not so easy. And, I don't want to steal all of the thunder. Next week, Ward will talk about loving kindness. But of course, it's what we did in the meditation. So much of the Buddha was so radical, saying, like, let's move from personal love to universal love. And let's develop an attitude of love and friendliness and towards all living beings. And it's a really tall order. And I feel like right now with the pandemic and with, it's going to be quite easy to be like, well, we're, just taking care of each other, the people that we love, and feeling like there's an adversarial relationship to others, like everyone's a potential threat, or in my way at the hour-and-a-half line at the grocery store or whatever's going on. So I know for myself, a practice of loving kindness becomes more key, whether I'm standing in line or I'm seeking out some toilet paper or I'm looking for some water or whatever it is. Metta as a real foundation to get us through these times, and remembering that every living being is experiencing difficulties and are all wanting to be happy and are all having some anxiety and some fear, and everyone's worthy of our kindness and our friendliness and our compassion. And that really this choosing to do the distancing and to not go out and self-quarantine, choosing to self-quarantine some, in a lot of ways, is an act of loving kindness, is an act of compassion. That I think most of us are aware that, oh, well, if I got it, I probably wouldn't die, get sick, and I'd probably be okay, but we don't know. But out of compassion, out of kindness, out of love for all beings, knowing that I could then spread it to other people that wouldn't survive it, and that would, overwhelm the healthcare system, all of this information that we're getting, so that our renunciation, where I started with this renunciation, even though it may be personally inconvenient or burdensome or, difficult, that it's actually coming from a place of love. It's actually coming from a place of caring about others, and how sort of selfish it would be to not practice some renunciation in this time, where the scientists and the people who know what they're talking about are really urging us to practice some renunciation. And it's central to our Buddhist practice, and we can do it, and it'll be of benefit to others. And that's what we're doing in our Dharma practice. How do we get free, and how do we be of benefit to others? Be a force of love and kindness and positive change on this planet. That's my intention, and I know that on some level or another, that's your intention as well. So I hope that this meditation practice and these reflections are useful to you. I'll give the talk about romantic love and how much suffering there is in sexuality, joy and sorrow, another time. I'll follow that up another time. Didn't feel appropriate tonight. So thank you for your practice, and may any goodness that comes from these practices and teachings be shared in all directions with all living beings. And together may we create a positive change on this planet.